For 17 years, even the youngest residents of the French commune of Germain couldn't truly enjoy life due to the pervasive fear that gripped their families. Local resident Manon lives near the former home of the grieving family, and her parents told her about what happened when she was still a child. "We walk the same streets, so, of course, we are afraid that someone might attack or abduct us," the girl says. "My father always accompanied me, and now we finally know what he did, and he confessed to everything. That is somewhat comforting." For 17 whole years, it was impossible to see a child walking alone on the street. On January 9, 2003, 9-year-old Estelle Mouzin disappeared while returning home from school in her hometown of Germain, in the department of Seine-et-Marne near Paris. The girl lived with her mother Suzanne Mouzin, who was in the process of divorcing her husband and Estelle's father, Eric Mouzin. The father lived in the commune of Le Vessinet with her older brother Arthur, approximately 60 kilometers away from her mother's home. When Suzanne returned home from work at 7:30 p.m. and realized that her daughter was not there, she reported the child's disappearance to the police. In July 2003, the police began to suspect that serial killer Michel Fourniret might be involved in Estelle's disappearance because he had confessed to killing 7 people, including 3 young girls. Michel Fourniret and Monique Olivier appeared to be ordinary French retirees, he with his glasses and well-groomed hands in a professorial pose, and she, with her sunken cheeks, resembled a typical grandmother looking after her grandchildren. Behind this facade, however, lay one of France's most dangerous sexual predators, who committed his murders with the active involvement of his wife and faithful accomplice. This grey-haired couple stood alongside the most horrifying criminals in the country's history. Using her image as a happily married respectable wife, Olivier instilled confidence in the girls that they had nothing to fear, while the poor victims were about to become the next prey of the killers. Once the girls were kidnapped, bound and sometimes drugged, Olivier would inspect them, checking whether they were virgins, which her husband desired. The couple met after Fourniret was arrested in 1984 for sexual crimes in the Paris area, and placed an advertisement in a newspaper seeking a pen pal. Michel and Monique corresponded for a long time, and then, as it turned out, Fourniret proposed to Olivier, a former caregiver, to get rid of her 2 ex-husbands who, according to Monique, had mistreated her. In exchange, she promised to find young girls for him. Fourniret never fulfilled his promise, but 2 months after his release in 1987, Olivier did what she called her first offering to her beast. Isabelle Laville was a shy 17-year-old girl, who was seeing a therapist. Olivier said she chose her because she reminded her of her young self but was still an innocent girl that her husband desired. Olivier drove up to Isabelle in her car and asked for directions, convincing the girl to get in the car and show her the way. A little further down the road, Fourniret was waiting for them, pretending to be a motorist who needed help, because his car broke down. Olivier stopped and allowed the man to get in. As they continued on their way, Fourniret, sitting in the back seat, strangled the girl and announced that she was now their captive. On the way back to their home, they drugged Isabelle too much. At home, Fourniret found himself unable to assault the girl, so he had sex with Monique instead, and then he killed Isabelle by strangling her. In 2006, he led the police to her remains, which were dumped in an old well. Olivier claimed she didn't know that Fourniret would kill the girl. Whatever the case, the incident seemed to solidify the relationship between the couple. In 1988, while pregnant, Olivier asked 20-year-old student Fabienne Leroy for help, saying she urgently needed to see a doctor. The sympathetic girl got into the car, and this time, Fourniret was behind the wheel. He drove the car into a field and forced the victim to get out at gunpoint. After Olivier checked the girl's virginity, Fourniret assaulted and killed Fabienne. Her body was found in a field the next day, and the couple continued to find victims and kill them following their established pattern. When their son Salim was born, the criminals didn't hesitate to use him as bait, telling girls they needed a doctor for the baby. Even if Olivier didn't always accompany her husband on his trips, he would always tell her about his exploits, claiming that he went hunting or saying, "I found satisfaction." In 2003, Fourniret made a mistake. A 13-year-old girl he abducted in Belgium managed to escape from his van when he stopped at a gas station. She chewed through the rope he used to tie her wrists. The girl was picked up by a passing motorist, who noted down the van's license plate number. Fourniret was arrested, and in his car, they found several hairs, one of which belonged to Mananya Thumpong, a 13-year-old girl whose remains were found in a forest in 2001. Fourniret was not eager to cooperate with the investigation, but the police from at least 5 countries, France, Belgium, the Netherlands, Germany, and Denmark, began reviewing cases of violence, abductions, and murders that remained unsolved, and resembled Fourniret's crimes. In Denmark, the police noticed that the composite sketch of a suspect in a violent crime closely resembled Fourniret, while in the Netherlands, Fourniret started to be suspected in the disappearance of 2 girls. In 2004, the criminal finally confessed to kidnapping and killing victims during the 1980s and 1990s, admitting to abducting 9 girls and young women during that time. He is also suspected of 10 more murders, 9 in France and 1 in Belgium. In 2006, rumors circulated that Fourniret might be the true culprit in the case of Christian Renucci. Christian, a 20-year-old man, was beheaded by the guillotine in France on July 28, 1976, after being suspected of killing 8-year-old Marie Dolores Rambler. This case had always been highly controversial. On June 3, 1974, Marie Dolores and her brother Jean met a young man driving a car, wearing a red sweater, who claimed he was looking for his lost dog. The man asked the children to help him, and Jean ran to search for the dog, while Marie Dolores got into the man's car and was abducted. An hour after the girl's disappearance, Christian's car, a grey Peugeot 304, was involved in an accident and left the scene. Witnesses described the driver's appearance to the police, who immediately concluded a connection between the abduction and the fleeing motorist. After a search, Marie Dolores' body was found in the bushes, where she had been strangled to death. Renucci was arrested due to the car accident and the fact that he was allegedly carrying a heavy package. Police found trousers with dried blood stains in his car, and the blood group on the trousers matched the girl's blood group. At first, Renucci confessed to the murder and told the police where he had hidden the knife, in the bushes. What was strange about this confession was that he only confessed to facts that the police had already established in the first 48 hours of the investigation. A day later, Renucci denied his involvement in the crime. Allegedly, Renucci's case was adjusted, and physical evidence was hidden to match his confession. The bloodstains on the trousers turned out to be much older and were merely the result of the man falling off a motorcycle. Moreover, Renucci had the same blood group as the girl. An elderly couple who witnessed the incident claimed to have seen the girl on the backseat of Renucci's car and heard her screaming. However, the credibility of this statement is questionable since the couple did not leave their own car, and the door of Renucci's car was broken from the side opposite to where the pensioners claimed he had taken the girl out. Later, 5 more people claimed to have witnessed the abduction, and all of them described a man who looked nothing like Renucci. 2 interesting points are worth noting. Firstly, Fourniret also drove a grey Peugeot 304, which from behind resembled a Simca 1100, a car described by 2 witnesses as the one the driver used to lure children inside on the day of Marie Dolores' abduction. The driver was wearing a red sweater, which was later found by investigators. As it turned out, the sweater found at the crime scene did not belong to Renucci, as several sizes too small for an athletic-looking young man like him. Secondly, the most surprising discovery was a photograph taken by a photographer from a Marseille newspaper in March 1976 in the courtroom during Renucci's trial. Among the visitors, there sat a man with glasses who suspiciously resembled Fourniret. Although the fact that Fourniret attended the trial was refuted, it is hard to deny that he is a much more suitable suspect in this case. For example, He went on vacation to Marseille in June 1974, driving a car of the same grey color and brand. At that time, he was 32 years old and, compared to Renucci, already had a history of sexual crimes. Fourniret also frequently used the lost dog trick to lure young girls into his car. Additionally, no signs of violence were found on the child's body. Unfortunately for Renucci, the media frenzy around the girl's murder made him a suspect even before the case went to trial. Immediately after his arrest, the press labeled him as the killer, and he was sentenced to death, becoming one of the last people executed in France. Why did the police begin to suspect that Michel Fourniret might be connected to the disappearance of Estelle Mouzin? 2 weeks before Estelle's disappearance, a 9-year-old girl was almost kidnapped by a man in a white van. The girl was able to describe the driver to the police, which led to the creation of a composite sketch of the suspect. When the police focused their efforts on Fourniret, who also drove a white van, they showed the girl a photo of him, hoping she would recognize him, but she didn't. Additionally, after his confession to the murders, Fourniret led the police to the burial site of one of his young victims. On the way there, he described the clothing the girl was wearing on the day of her abduction, which was similar to what Estelle was wearing on the day she disappeared, although the police believe this might be a mere coincidence. Sometime later, the police found photos of Estelle and recordings of television programs about the girl in Fourniret's house and on his computer. It's worth noting that 2 fragments of white shoelaces and black gloves were found with Fourniret, and Estelle was wearing white shoes and black gloves on the day of her disappearance. However, the police couldn't find any additional connections between the serial killer and the crime, and the hypothesis of Fourniret's involvement had to be discarded due to a lack of evidence. Moreover, he had an alibi. He claimed he made a phone call to his son from his home on the day the girl disappeared. Although there was no certainty that Fourniret actually made that call, the police believed he was not lying. Psychologists were also confident that Fourniret was not involved in the case because Estelle was too young for him. The 3 girls he confessed to murdering were 12 and 13 years old. His accomplice and wife, Monique Olivier, told the police that once when they were watching a TV program accusing Fourniret of killing Estelle, he laughed and said it wasn't him. In May 2010, the Mouzin family's lawyer requested a new investigation into Fourniret's involvement. In 2013, he was declared innocent after several hair analyses from his van, conducted when he was arrested in 2003, did not match Estelle's DNA. As for the second suspect in Estelle Mouzin's kidnapping, Nordal Lelandais, the police were interested in him in connection with 3 different crimes. He was the main suspect in the murder of Arthur Noyer, a soldier who disappeared in April, and whose skull was found in September. He was also the main suspect in the case of the disappearance of Maëlys de Araujo, a 9-year-old girl who was kidnapped from a wedding on August 27, 2017. 9-year-old Maëlys de Araujo was last seen on the night of August 27, 2017, at a wedding to which she was invited with her parents. At the event, the children were playing separately from the adult celebration. Around 3 a.m., her absence was noticed, and her search began initially without police involvement. A witness at the wedding recalled, the DJ of the evening announced over the microphone that a child was missing. Suddenly everyone started searching in the main hall and outside. It was terrible. To witness the disappearance of a 9-year-old girl, it's very serious. At first, we thought she fell asleep somewhere after playing hide and seek. An hour later, when she wasn't found, the police were called. The arriving police initiated the search for the child using search dogs and also explored the area with helicopters. All 180 guests invited to the wedding were interviewed. Almost immediately, investigators noticed inconsistencies in the statements of Nordal Lelandais, a friend of the groom. A week into the investigation, after crime scene analysts found DNA belonging to the girl on the dashboard of Lelandais' car, he was charged with her kidnapping. From that moment, Lelandais remained silent, refusing to assist the investigation, and claimed that even though the girl might have been in his car, it didn't prove his guilt. As the police conducted their investigation into the child's disappearance, they discovered other clues pointing to Lelandais' involvement. In particular, a surveillance camera captured a car belonging to the man leaving the wedding venue with a small figure on the passenger seat shortly before the girl's disappearance was reported. The blurry silhouette was wearing a white dress, similar to what Maëlys was wearing. The parents recognized elements of the dress, especially the child's ribbon, said their lawyer, Fabien Rajon. Additionally, Lelandais' phone was in airplane mode around the time of the girl's disappearance, and it turned back on 39 minutes later, when he returned to the celebration alone. It was also established that the next day, Lelandais spent several hours cleaning his car with powerful cleaning products. He claimed he did it to prepare the car for sale. Lelandais' defense initially disputed the timeline provided by the prosecution. His lawyer confirmed that while traces of the girl's DNA were found on his car's dashboard, his client completely denied kidnapping her. He stated that several DNA traces were found on the dashboard, and someone who had contact with the child could have transferred her DNA into the car. He also speculated that children could have gotten into the car without the driver's knowledge, noting that the windows were open during the celebration. After 6 months of investigation, Lelandais was forced to change his statements when Maëlys' blood was found in the trunk of his car. He confessed to killing the girl and apologized to her parents. Earlier, he had admitted that she was in his car on the night of her disappearance but claimed not to know anything about her subsequent fate. Now, he admitted that he unintentionally killed the child. The prosecutor from Grenoble, Jean-Yves Coquelet, stated that Lelandais led investigators to the location near his parents' home in Domessine, Savoie Department, where the body was found. The search for the remains of the young girl took an entire day and was complicated by snow and rough terrain. Some of the girl's remains were found by the investigators and search dogs. The prosecutor from Grenoble said that Maëlys' parents are no longer in the dark, adding that they know their daughter is dead, that she was killed, and that a few minutes ago, they were told that the child's remains were found. This is a horrific conclusion to the case, the culmination of 6 months of investigation and search, he added. The girl's mother addressed Lelandais through a Facebook message. "We had to wait 5.5 months for this monster to finally speak. Maëlys will haunt you day and night in your cell," she wrote, grieving. "My little angel, I couldn't protect you from this predator, and I will blame myself for that for a long time." Nordal Lelandais, a former military dog handler who was also charged with the murder of a young soldier, claims that he killed Maëlys de Araujo by mistake but refused to provide details of what happened. Post-mortem examination showed that the girl had a broken jaw, likely from a strong blow to the face. The prosecutors handling Maëlys' case suspect Lelandais to be a serial killer. On December 21, 2017, he was charged with the murder of Arthur Noyer, a 23-year-old soldier who disappeared without a trace during a hike on April 12, 2017. The soldier's relatives admitted that they also hoped to learn the truth about his death. Arthur was last seen early in the morning on April 12, 2017, as he left a nightclub to go on a hike in Chambéry. Pieces of his skull were found on a hiking trail in the municipality of Montmelian, near Chambéry, in September. The phone company recorded Lelandais' phone in the same area at the time of the soldier's disappearance. Lelandais' Audi A3 was also spotted by surveillance cameras in the Chambéry area. During the investigation, police also searched his computer and phone, and it was revealed that 2 weeks after the soldier's disappearance, Lelandais entered the search query "human body dismemberment." Over time, Lelandais confessed to investigators that he gave the soldier a ride but denied any involvement in his death before finally admitting to the murder on March 29, 2018. There are also suspicions that Lelandais may be responsible for the unsolved murder of 3 people in the Alps when a British man, his wife, and his mother-in-law were killed in a car park in a wooded area in September 2012. Other cases in which Lelandais may be involved include the disappearance of Adrien Murel, a 24-year-old Belgian man who went missing near Lake Annecy in July, and Jean-Christophe Morin and Ahmed Hamad, who disappeared in 2011 and 2012, respectively. Lelandais' alleged connections to these murders led the police to start reviewing other cases of missing people in the region, as they feared he might be a serial killer. The police investigated his possible involvement in at least 10 other crimes. While investigating other potential crimes, Lelandais' connection to the case of Estelle Mouzin came to light. Maëlys' disappearance bore similarities to Estelle's case, as the girls were about the same age, and both vanished without a trace, with no witnesses to the abductions. Recognizing this similarity, Estelle's family requested to determine Lelandais' whereabouts at the time of their daughter's disappearance. Unfortunately, or perhaps fortunately, it turned out that he was serving in the military in the Marne department, 150 kilometers away from where Estelle disappeared. Thus, law enforcement had to dismiss him as a second prospective suspect in Estelle Mouzin's abduction case. Over the course of several years while the search for Estelle was ongoing, other potential leads were discovered, which ultimately led nowhere. For instance, a real shock for the girl's family was the appearance of a photo allegedly of Estelle, which was taken from a website containing indecent images of children. Her father confessed how upset he was by the appearance of such a photo, but it turned out not to be his daughter. The girl in the photo appeared older than Estelle, and the image was taken several years before her disappearance. The police had no new leads, and the chances of finding Estelle were diminishing before their eyes. But then thunder struck on January 24, 2020, when Monique Olivier, the former wife of Michel Fourniret, claimed that her ex-husband killed Estelle Mouzin. On March 6, 2020, her statements were confirmed by Michel Fourniret himself. For years, Michel Fourniret denied any involvement in the girl's disappearance. However, 16.5 years later, on November 27, 2019, Michel Fourniret, a serial killer and predator of minors who was already serving a life sentence, became the primary suspect once again. He was charged with abduction and forced confinement, which ended in death. On January 24, 2020, Monique Olivier confirmed to Judge Sabine Keris that it was indeed her who made the phone call from their home to Fourniret's son on January 9, 2003, the day of the girl's disappearance. Not stopping there, she continued to narrate that the girl represented the type of victim her husband was seeking, and she was not too young for him, as psychologists once claimed. She admitted that a few days before the abduction, her husband had been driving around the region and returned one evening, announcing that he had spotted a beautiful little target, as he put it. Responding to questions from the investigating judge after his alibi collapsed due to his former wife's confession, Fourniret finally confirmed that he abducted and killed the girl. However, the elderly Fourniret claimed during the hearing that he suffers from memory loss and was not formally charged. "It is very likely, even very, very likely, that I was the author of that disappearance," Fourniret said, asserting that nothing clicked in his head when he was shown a picture of the girl. "Since I cannot say for sure that I am responsible for her disappearance, I call on you to consider me as guilty," he added. Fourniret, 78 years old according to media reports, is suffering from the early stages of Alzheimer's disease, experiencing moments of absence, but is generally understood everything, according to Didier Sabin, the lawyer of Estelle's father. To corroborate Fourniret's statements, Monique Olivier was questioned again, and she confirmed that her husband did indeed abduct and kill Estelle Mouzin. Although Fourniret confessed to the girl's murder, he refused or was unable to reveal the location where he hid her body. He only mentioned that she might be on the property of one of his houses in the Ardennes. Forensics began the grim search for the girl's remains on Monday, June 22, 2020. Experts sealed off Fourniret's former home in northern France, more than 200 kilometers from where Estelle was abducted on her way home from school. The police also cordoned off another former residence of Fourniret in Château de Sautou, where the remains of other victims of the killer, a 12-year-old girl and a 22-year-old woman, were found in 2004. Unfortunately, they did not find Estelle's body. "We can report some progress, but some doors have been closed forever, places we can now discard," said one of the lawyers representing the Mouzin family. Even before Fourniret's confession to Estelle's murder, the serial killer, nicknamed the Monster of the Ardennes, as well as the virginity hunter, had been sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. His accomplice, Monique Olivier, also received a life sentence with the possibility of parole only after 28 years.